So let's invite this afternoon's speakers, Dr. Huang, Professor Sun, and Professor Ashley Ho again to join us in our panel discussion. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Dr. Huang, Professor Sun, and Professor Ho. So we have some questions from the audience that we can start off the panel discussion with. So this one is directed at Dr. Huang. AI can absolutely enhance the efficiency of designing, but how does AI impact on creativity, empathy of designers? Any challenges and opportunities here? This is a question from...
Sorry, I cannot hear very clearly.
Oh, sorry, I'll repeat the question again, okay?
Okay.
So AI can absolutely enhance the efficiency of designing, but how does AI impact on creativity and empathy of designers? What are the challenges and opportunities?
What do you mean the entropy?
Empathy of creativity and empathy of designers. Can you hear me?
I cannot very understand the question. So could you give me more explanation about it?
Okay. How about let's focus on how do you think AI will impact on the creativity of designers?
Oh, okay, the creativity. Yes, as the presentation shows that, I think one aspect is that with artificial intelligence technologies, we can generate massive reference, so that sometimes when we lack some ideas, perhaps we can use this reference to inspire us. I think this is one major aspect. In fact, and the artificial intelligence is, so from strictly speaking, is just like a statistic model, mathematical models. So it only can learn the priori knowledge or expert knowledge from the existing data. So that when our data set do not include such kind of information, and the artificial intelligence technology, we are not able to learn new knowledge. So that means the human's intelligence or knowledge is the upper bound of current AI technologies. But in the other times, I think each person, just like us, we have limited energy to to think our cases. But this is what artificial intelligence capable of. They can generate massive cases, massive samples by just interpolating the parameters of the solution spaces. So you can generate massive scenes. I think this is one way that the artificial intelligence can inspire us.
Thank you. I can see both Professor Sun and Professor Ho nodding their heads when Dr. Huang was answering. Maybe I ask Professor Sun to give his response as well. Sorry, I think your mic is... Professor Sun, we cannot hear you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thanks. Okay now.
Sorry. I think I want to add several ideas of my team. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we are not only talking about the machine learning thing, not only talk about, for example, the traditional algorithms in artificial intelligence courses, because when we talk about AI, it's everything related to big data, to AIoT, to almost everything related in the IT area. So that's why when you raised the question about the designer's creativity, it's about, I like what Professor Ashley mentioned, that AI will excel in the solution space, liberating designers to focus more on the problem space. So on one hand, AI is helping designers to better understand our users, and we can use AI can, for example, inspire the designers. On the other hand, and which I think is more importantly, AI is helping the designer to generate more solutions, and that the designers have more energy, have more time to better understand the question, better understand their users. So that's what I want to share.
Okay, Professor Hall, you want to chip in here?
Yes, I sort of very much agree with the two sets of comments that have been made before. Actually, I think there's at the moment there's a fundamental difference between the nature of intelligences between AI and human creative capacity. So these two things are worlds apart at the moment, and it looks like it's going to be a long time before these two types of intelligences come together, if they ever will do. But I think apart from those fundamental differences, at some point in the future, if we do see AIs moving into creative territory or design territory, then we're going to shift as well. So I think the nature of our shifting, or our creative thinking rather, will shift into a different space. And human beings have very elastic minds, where we're good at interfacing with technologies, machines, bending our minds around them. And I certainly don't see this as a kind of as a threat to our creative spaces. But I think it will be probably a very long time before we see AIs that even get close to the type of creativity that we see designers exhibiting today.
Okay, thank you, Professor Hall. We have a question directed to Dr. Huang from Dr. David Williams from Global Digital. So how does design education need to change to help design students avoid being accelerated or automated by AI tools, or stop them being replaced by non-professional users? So how does we incorporate the changes without changing students into automated human AIs? So Dr. Huang.
Okay. In fact, I'm not very professional of the education side. In fact, all our great works are all related to the product, especially for the commercial customer products. But for my understanding, I think that there are already some AI-empowered education products. In fact, we are also trying to explore some how to say that, some education assistant tools. For example, there are already some products such as long as it's Stretch or something like that. In fact, we also use just as the presentation mentioned, we use the Animoji, something like this, to use the artificial intelligence and technology to make the education fun. And also, in fact, not very, how to say that, perhaps it relates to some privacy. In fact, we also use some surveillance technologies try to track the students in the room, because some students may have some abstraction behaviors, or may not focus on the lessons. So we also try to analyze their behaviors. I think this is another part. Yes.
Maybe also Professor Hall, you want to add on here? Because as educators, and you have shown some very good examples of students working on AI without any signs of being automated. So you want to elaborate here a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the examples I gave in my talk was where students are very obviously and consciously designing for or with AIs. But I think the challenge for education is visibility. It's actually I've got this thing here. This is my phone. It's got lots of AI in it. I've got no idea when it switches on and off, or how many are operating at the same time. And that's going to be the challenge for education, is actually knowing when our students are using AIs, when they aren't, how it influences their thinking. And that probably sounds like a slightly negative comment, but I think there's also possibly some very positive things that could come out of this as well, where possibly, for example, our students are working in the daytime, they're working on their educational projects. There may be AIs are doing work overnight. The students are then coming back in the next day. So we can imagine these interesting sort of collaborations, handing off different types of work from that problem space and solution space from our students. But I think, as we said earlier, it's probably going to be quite a long time before or a very long time, maybe even decades, before we see these two types of intelligence starting to overlap. But certainly for design education, I think we're at the very earliest stages, and I believe over time it will profoundly change the way that we teach, and many of the disciplines that we see now in design will change quite fundamentally. And I can imagine that we will need, or we'll develop a whole new breed of designers who think in very different ways. Traditional design is based on very tangible things. It's based on graphic design, industrial design, interior design, and so on. So very physically based disciplines where we can see and we can touch the materials. We can tangibly understand the impact of our designs. Whereas AI and machine learning is very different. So that's a type of material which for classic design is much more intangible. And so I think we will need to develop some very different sets of skills over time to integrate this successfully into design. Thank you.
Professor Sun, you talk about the four relationships between AI and designers, from being a servant to being a co-creator. Maybe you can give some insights onto this question.
Okay. I think, actually, I want to return to the AI education part. So I think that's AI education part in design education. That's a very interesting topic, also related to the AI work as a servant or a partner to the designer. So I also noticed that someone in the Zoom meeting mentioned that everyone is looking forward to seeing AI as a very important part of design education. But I want to share that I think the designer, even today in the age of AI, the designer does not need and cannot master all the technical content, which means, okay, a designer, we don't need to be an AI scientist, an AI engineer. But the most important part is the designer must have the necessary dialogue channels with technology. We must know how to talk with the AI scientists, how to communicate with the engineers. It's like a designer does not need to be a very good artist or a top engineer or a very good color engineer, but the designer must have the ability to talk to artists, talk to engineers, talk to those entrepreneurs. And I think we cannot persuade artists and engineers to take the initiative to talk to designers. It's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility. Our designers must know how to talk with the AI scientist. And also our designer needs to know how to use AI, not how to invent new algorithms, invent new softwares. So it's very important that we must understand what AI can do now, what's the cost, what AI cannot do. We must know the boundary of AI. So that's very important. As you mentioned that I think AI can be a servant or can be a partner to designer. It's very, very important that as a designer, we must know, okay, what AI can do, what the servant can do, what the partner can do. So that's, I think, what we should learn, what we should put our efforts into, for example, to change our design education. Our students, our designers must know, okay, AI's ability and know how to talk with them, how to communicate with them. And then AI can be our servant, can be our partner, can be our student. Without that, it will be quite difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is directed to the entire panel. It's from Susan Evans. The question is, do you think we can design with AI for learning rather than replacement? And what would this need?
Mm-hmm.
So, gentlemen, anyone want to take this on first?
Okay, I can give some comments about it.
Thank you,
In
Dr.
fact, I
Huang.
think most of us just focus on we leverage the artificial intelligence in the very early stage or in the procession of design. But in fact, I think especially for the design education, As far as I know, I'm not a professional, have no professional knowledge about design, but perhaps I understand that design is some kind of very abstract activity. So even for how to say for professional, if we want for teacher, if we want to teach design concept or design ideas and then try to teach it to the other students, it may be sometimes very abstract. So perhaps we can use the technology, use the artificial intelligence technology because it is so good at to extract priori knowledge from the existing works. So perhaps we can from the other side, we are not trying to use to how to say to use artificial intelligence at the early age of the design, but try to how to say to collect information from existing design arts. And then we can how to say that we can visualize it or use other kind of presentation to how to say that to make the design idea concrete enough. Just as one example that I showed in my presentation. In fact, is just an experience for myself. Usually, given a sketch or drawing, it's very difficult for non-professional users just like me to how to start drawing the first stroke or then the following second stroke or something like this. But I think that if there are already some enough existing drawings, we can try to extract this information, this professional information, and then try to show it to the students. I think this may be help. Yeah.
Professor Hall, maybe?
Yes, thank you. Could you just repeat the question as well?
The question was, do you think we can design with AI for learning rather than replacement? And what would this need?
Yes, I think there's some interesting developments I've heard of, which is where we're now using technologies like AI to help teachers teach groups of school children. So the way this works is the technology understands the concentration levels of the students, and then it understands the depth of their learning, and where that changes, it proposes new learning strategies to the teacher. So this is quite interesting. It's actually using ways of sensing concentration levels, ways of understanding depth of learning, and then proposing different strategies. So it's effectively helping the teacher to improve their, I guess, computational ability, which is very useful, because if you think about teaching groups of children or groups of students, if you have 50 students, their combined intelligence will be far higher than that of the lecturer or the person who's actually teaching them. So what we normally do in most educational situations is we apply restraints. So we actually limit people by telling them they can't talk, and we make them all face the same direction. And in school, we make children wear uniforms. So it takes away those layers of intelligence so that the teacher can actually control this space. So AI could actually make a significant difference there, where it can actually partner with the teacher or with the academic and increase the level of intelligence, so that all the pupils gain and can actually learn at different levels as well and different speeds. So I think there's some great opportunities there.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question, which goes back to education. As again to the panel, do you think using AI as education tool influence students a lot in the psychological aspect? Maybe Dr. Sun, you want to take this on? The psychological aspect of students learning through AI tools.
Okay, so we are not talking about the AI design part. We are talking about AI education,
Yeah.
AI plus education area.
Yeah, AI
Am I right?
Yes, it's education tools in general.
Okay, so in my idea, so everyone is talking, almost all the area is talking about AI, what AI can do, what AI can transfer this industry in this area. Of course, education is being transferred by AI. So it's very important that AI is, I think AI is always about, okay, how to collect data, how to analyze data, how to, okay, maybe generate several solutions also provide us several solutions. So I think that's why when we talk about the education area, especially when we talk about generalized education, so there are so many challenges in the traditional education area. For example, we don't have so many good professors. And also we are using AI for the virtual meeting. So guys, the professors from different countries can share their ideas. And also, just like what I mentioned in my talks, using AI can better understand our students, whether they are confused, whether they need help. So that's why I think, of course, AI is changing everything, because my children is using online courses every day. And I think the service is much better than the campus learning environment. So that's why I think, yeah, of course, it's changing the education area.
Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to add some comments.
Sure, please go ahead, Dr. Huang.
Although I'm a super fan of artificial intelligence because I'm a participant, but I have to say that, yes, it also has a side effect. Just as the question said, it also, I think it is perhaps a side effect of psychology aspect. One thing is that the artificial intelligence, especially the popular deep learning technologies, is always abused as a black box. So you just need the input, and you do not need to know how it runs, and then it will give some output. So from my experience, it will make me, it will make me lazy of thinking. You just give input and you output. You do not need to know the principle or how it works exactly. So just as the example I showed in my presentation, you give a lot of image, and you just give a lot of scratches or give a lot of sketches. It will automatically generate a lot of images. So it just skips the detailed steps, and perhaps I think sometimes inspirations from from the start to the ending. So I'm not sure it's good a bad thing. Perhaps it reduce a lot of detailed works and make people to focus on much high level ideas or high level creativities. But on the other hand, I think for education, perhaps we also have that we start from step to step, even though is existing solutions. Perhaps we also need them to practice step by step to know not just to know what to do, but also know how to do. I think this is one comment from me. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe before Professor Hall answer this question, I'll add in another question to make it a little bit more challenging to wake you up. I know it's very early morning for you in UK. It's a question from Griti Jera. The question was, what if AI becomes visible and noticeable? Which I think she meant that when AI becomes very, very obvious and ubiquitous, you see it everywhere, what will be the gains for the human society? So again, maybe that has to do with the psychological aspects as well. So we actually do have, as Professor Hall has shown just now with your phone, we have AI running all around us anyway. So what do you think, is that a psychological impact on like everyday people? And what can society gain from this ubiquitous applications of AI? I try to turn off my Google ads every day, but it's just not successful. Professor Hall, you go ahead first, just to wake you up, save you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, thank you. I think I need to do that. So I think I'll take the second question first, actually, which is around the visibility of AI. I think it's a very interesting question. It's one of the things that we do as designers is we create meaning. When we often create tangible visual things that help people understand products and objects and systems. So I think this is one of the big challenges for design is when AI becomes visible. Like what does it become visible as? How do we understand it? How does it become tangible? I think one of the examples I showed Yulia Ionescu's PhD, where she was looking at anthropocentrization looking at AI and trying to figure out how do we understand, human behaviors in these complex systems, gives us a few clues, that actually this is something that we certainly need to be thinking about, is that when we identify with this level of complexity, we're going to have to design in some kind of models, and we're going to have to design in some kind of metaphors that people actually can identify with, so they can engage with them on a more tangible level. So I think that's one of the challenges. Actually, in many ways, I think visibility is the opportunity, and obscurity is the risk. So obscurity is the kind of the disappearance of AI into the background in a way that we find it very difficult to start to understand. When are we working with an AI? When aren't we? That brings in ethical questions. Certainly, in education, brings in lots of questions about who we're assessing, how we're assessing them. And of course, we're sort of speculating here as well. So we're at the very early stages of where this could make an impact. And I think the question before that was about the psychological aspect of using AI tools in general. And I think we've again there we're at a very early stage. We're not quite sure what impact it is going to have. I think in some ways it could be very reassuring to have these kind of secondary intelligences that we work with and that we partner with. And I think the collaborative educational aspects are going to be very, very interesting. And that's where we'll see these new evolutions taking place, and when we really see whether these become very sophisticated tools, or whether they really diverge off into a space that gives us that kind of parallel form of intelligence.
Professor Sun, you just now when you showed that the banners by Alibaba, they are all designed by this AI engine. I was a little bit surprised. So that shows just how visible this AI, at least the product of AI, is very, very visible, whether we like it or not. I mean, every day I turn on my computer and then I just see whatever products like tennis shoes or sweater that I look at on any of these shopping sites will reappear on any website. So that's very, very visible. So what do you think are the gains of society when this happens, to the extent that, well, I still couldn't figure out how to turn it off. Maybe I will ask you guys afterwards how to turn these things off. So what are your views on the gains of society? Or actually, the flip side of that is that, do we lose anything because of this very, very visible and ubiquitous products and outcomes of AI? Thank you.
Okay. Actually, personally, I don't know the pros and cons in the coming AI age, because technology is only technology. So AI is only a very, very promising technology. Just like Dr. Wong mentioned, AI per se has pros and cons, but that's what designers should do. Designers' job is transfer the technology into some product, into some service, and try to make sure that those designed technology, those products, those services can make our life better, can help us get rid of those cons, but only keep the pro parts. So I think that's why design is very, very important today, because we are facing a changing world. We are entering the age of design. That's the first idea. The second idea is, I think just like plywood, plywood is the material of the modern world. So many industrial designers know how to use plywood, and there are so many workshops, so many maker spaces can also provide the necessary materials, necessary tools to help the designers to use plywood to design so many things. Even today, I believe also in PolyU back in Zhejiang University. So today, AI is also a basic material of design. So we can see that, AI is everywhere, but the challenge for designers is, how to transfer this material into the product. And that's why I think, I don't know what the world will be. Are there any pros? Are there any cons? But I think it's very important that designers should use AI just like the designers, how designers they use plywood. So to use AI to design some product for a better world. So that's what I'm thinking now.
Okay, so we have a next question. Again, it's to the panel. If a designer or researcher uses AI-enabled platforms for design or research, then how should the data privacy issue be dealt with? This is from Greta Jera. So the data privacy issues in designers and researchers using AI, which obviously collects a lot of data. So maybe Dr. Huang, you want to share your views on data privacy issues? Sorry, your mic is not on.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, data privacy is also a concern in artificial intelligence, especially the deep learning technology, because it consumes a lot of data. But with the development of technology, there were also some kind of new technology we called federal learning. What does federal learning mean? It means that because there are so many mobile devices and you cannot collect users' data from mobile device and then to the data center and then try to process it. That's not privacy friendly. So the federal learning is kind of knowledge that they do not try to send the data to the center, but just use the data on the mobile device. They will not try to collect the data. The deep learning model will learn it just on the mobile device, and it will not send the data, the raw data. It will not send the raw data to the data center. And also another important thing is that all raw data will be processed so that there will be no information about personality information. They just try to extract the common information, not a personality, not your name, not your address, or not your other things. And all extract information are just, how to say it, are just abstract information. And this abstract information cannot be recovered back to get your personal information. I think this is one way that perhaps can, how to say it, can to solve, not solve, but can elevate the problems. Yeah.
Professor Hall, understandably, obviously, your center and your PhD students will do a lot of research employing AI technology. So this is obviously a question very, very close to your work on data privacy issues. We can't really try to get informed consent from all those people with data that you may be using in your research. So what are your views on how to protect data privacy issues in terms of conducting design or research with AI platforms?
Yeah, I think with data privacy, we sort of have models and we have protocols of how to deal with data on a general basis. So I think those are actually there, and we certainly wouldn't anticipate or undertake using data from people who hadn't given their permission. But I think actually one of the bigger challenges is around complexity. So we have very complex systems, large amounts of data that might be relying on data from other databases or other systems. Then it's actually figuring out who owns this data, who's actually given it, or who's given permission for it to be used. That becomes a much more difficult problem. And I think also kind of aligned to that, I guess from my perspective, the bigger risk really is around the design of the algorithm and the bias that's potentially inherent in that aspect. So it's the ethical issues of the algorithm, the design is a greater concern maybe than some of the data privacy. For example, we know that there's been some well-publicized cases of programmers from a certain cultural group, programmed to AI, and it represents the values of that group, but doesn't represent the values of others. So that's obviously, one of the things that we need to think about as we go forwards as well.
Okay, Dr. Sun, Professor Sun, you have any?
Yes. I think, okay, first, I think the scientists, even the AI scientists, they know that data is very difficult to obtain, and data privacy is a big challenge. That's why, as Dr. Huang mentioned, that there are federal learning, also there are small sample learning, transfer learning. The scientists are inventing new algorithms, new models to try to use smaller data and try to respect the data privacy. And also there are other, I think there are others doing research in the ethics, laws, and regulations, and they are bringing us more specific design principles in this area. So another example is, okay, maybe we need third-party supervision to better protect our data privacy. That's not one person's work. That's everyone's work, everyone related, the scientists, the designers, the government, everyone related in this area. We are working together to give our solution, give maybe a whole system of solution to protect our data privacy.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Professor Sun. Well, another big topic in design practice as well as education in recent years is the area of service design. So the next question is from Fei Hao. May I know how AI contributes to service design? So can you give us a few examples that we can use in practice, not just theoretically? So any, maybe Professor Hall, based on the research, any actual practice examples in AI contributes to service design? I think you actually mentioned the view when you show your students' projects.
Yes, there was the example we gave of Gustav Borgenfalk, who's researching persuasive systems, of which AI is a huge part of persuasive systems, and he was looking at concepts from cybernetics. So it's how we can act in a system, design in a system or use it, and also observe the system at the same time. And so that's effectively about how you work with black boxes and feedback loops. And for service design, this is absolutely crucial, understanding how we can integrate artificial intelligence, into service design operations, how we can account for that kind of black box aspect of the technology, and how we can design for it as well. So this is, again, at very early stages of this type of research, but we're starting to understand, some of the directions that we could certainly go in. And again, one of the big challenges is around ethics, it's around accountability, and it's around the responsibility of designers. If you are designing for a system which has an AI at its heart, and you have hundreds of thousands of users, then some of the small decisions that you make from a design perspective could have huge implications for the people who are using that service. So we don't have very good models that allow us to understand all the different implications of various design decisions. That's still something that's very much at the early phases. So we're effectively experimenting on the public.
Professor Sun, anything on service design, AI platforms?
Yes. Yes, I mentioned in my slides the digital perception part. I hope you. Yes, I mentioned there's one research example, the automatic persona generation. So I think that's very useful tool in service design area, because service design is, it's very, very complicated, because we are not designing a physical thing. We are designing for that. There's no thing for us to not a physical thing for us to design, but the environment, lots of people, lots of scenarios. In many cases, large number of users are involved, and very difficult to test, to verify our design. So in this case, this almost is the best case for AI, because AI is very good at collect data, collect users' data, especially when the number is huge. And AI is very good at understand our consumers' feeling. We have the affective computing technology. So that's why I think service design, of course, will be the most important area for AI to play its role to change this area.
Well, you just mentioned collecting a lot of data through AI in service design. I think in my school, and obviously as well as at PolyU, we keep on urging our students to go out and work with the community to actually learn what the users really need. But now with AI collecting data, so the actual contact with users versus the very, very large scale data-driven analysis. So how do we balance the two, especially when we talk about service design? So maybe again, maybe Professor Sun, you can give us some insights on this, how we balance students actually going.
You mean balance what?
The balance between students or designers actually going out to contact the community versus relying on data analysis from the AI platforms. So how do we balance the two?
I think it's not a question of balancing the two. It's about, can we use AI as a tool we are bringing AI to the community to do the research. So it's not, A or B. It's about how we use A in the B scenario. I remember that some professor in the media lab, he mentioned that he's using big data, using so many cameras to capture the users' movement, the consumers' movement in the bank branch, and then using the data visualization technology to show us the result. For example, some consumers are waiting in a long line and they need some kind of help. So that's very vivid example that, if our students, our designers can use this AI, can use plus this online big data thing, and then go to the community, talk with our consumers, then I think it's just like, we have wings, we have more power to better understand the scenario, better understand our customers, and then to test our solutions.
Professor Hall, do you agree that it's not about balancing actual going out to community, but really using the tools of AI to understand the community?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable that we're going to go out into communities using AI, and we're sort of doing it already. So I think that sort of bird has flown, and so I think the understanding the practices around that are particularly important. And one of our student projects was actually looking at how you work with people with dementia in relation to AI. So how do you understand ethics? So if you're working with people who have less or different cognitive abilities, what are the ethical process there, and how can you bring in people with different levels of ability into AI research? So I think that's one of the things that's so a huge opportunity, but also a huge challenge is how do you explain the technologies in ways accessible to different groups of ability, and then how do we research ethically in those areas?
How about Dr. Huang in industry? So do you still have designers going out to the community, or the data, or the AI tools will actually do more of the collecting of or understanding of users?
In fact, all of our products are just the middleware to the users. In fact, our solutions are not direct to provide to the end users, but to some mobile device companies. And in fact, they do not allow us to collect information. Perhaps they will collect information, but usually they will not share this kind of information for us. In fact, nowadays, the data is really very expensive and also very, very important. So how do we try to extract users' behaviors, or to analyze users' behaviors, especially in augmented reality assistance? One way that we do is to use the simulation. No, because we cannot, because all our products are runs in real time, so that if you collect too much information, you also will impact the runtime performance. So in other ways, we always try to stimulate the behaviors in a simulation environment. We are trying to stimulate different kind of behaviors. Sometimes these behaviors cannot be done by human, but that doesn't matters because all our designed behaviors will cover a large part of some common users, and then we have our algorithms to evaluate these behaviors in the simulated environment, not in the real environment. So at the last, of course, we are trying to test it in real time, but then we are not use such large group of users. Yeah.
Thank you. The next two questions are directly directed to one of the speakers. So the first one is to Professor Sun again. The question that I can understand, AI may enhance the design tool to support design process. Is that what your team has been doing, is to use AI to replace part of the function of design? For example, to design banners, but not enhancing or improving it. So is it only to replace part of the function, but do you also actually enhance and improve? So Professor
I think there are actually two teams in this area. The first team is trying to replace the outsourcing design part. Okay, traditionally they are using templates. They are using very strict regulations to the sellers. So the seller must upload what kind of image, the color of the product, and then the system put them into a template. So we are trying to replace this outsourcing design part. Another part is trying to provide inspirations for the designers. So in this case, for example, about 8% of the banners are what I mentioned is the low value consumable banner. And also maybe 10 or 20% part is the very challengeable design part. This part, we are only providing tools to the designers, help the designer to better collect the data, better understand, what's the fashion trend, what's the users would be more interested in, and what color will arouse the user's attention, etc. So basically, there's two teams focusing in this area.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is directed to Professor Hall. So it's quote unquote culture and heritage. Do you think that designers could generate more AI design value from this area? It's from Fawad Bakhotma. It's so can AI design generate more values in the area of culture and heritage?
Thanks for that question. So it's effectively asking us whether we can generate more value from heritage and culture through design and AI. And I think on the one hand, the positive possibilities is being able to look at much larger collections, much larger amounts of data. We know that this is happening in museums and private collections where people are digitizing large amounts of information, and we're able to visualize different types of relationships between historical events that we weren't able to do before. One of my colleagues at the RCA works on visualizations of timelines where there's new digital collections, and it allows us to use different computational abilities to see new evolutions in historic information. So that's very useful. I think there's also probably a large amount of work to in a different space. Obviously, that's great with things which you can digitize, which are information-based, data-based. But in terms of qualitative aspects, there's obviously a large gap or a large opportunity there as well to see how AI can start in future evolutions, helping us look at those aspects. And there's one thing I'd like to add, if I can, as well, that links back to previous conversations, is originally designers and certain sort of design that I sort of trained as an industrial designer, we were given pieces of engineering and we were told or asked to make them look beautiful. That was the original route of design. And so over time, we started getting frustrated by this relationship, and we started moving more and more into the engineering and technology space and influencing the engineering and technology, and you could see designers moving backwards into that technology space. I think the same is happening in AI now, where designers are having to understand certain aspects of AI, and we're being drawn into the system, we're being drawn into the human behaviors, we're being drawn into the mental models. So over time, developing into the future, I can very much see that designers will start moving into that space, working much more heavily with coders and people developing algorithms, because effectively, if you're going to successfully negotiate that relationship between humans and machines, it can't just be a handover. It has to be a flexible, very, very collaborative relationship between large groups of different disciplines.
Thank you. We have a question from Choi Jin Young. It's asked if AI can do design by itself. So in the future, would the role of designer would just be choosing one from options generated by AI? and anybody, Dr. Huang, you want to take this on first? So are we going to, designers become choosing from options that AI have helped generate? What do you think? You have to turn on your mic.
In my opinion, in future, the AI, artificial intelligence technology will, of course, evolve a lot, but just as far as I know, and I think there's still perhaps really required a lot of revolution from underground to make the artificial intelligence finally, we cannot say that replace human. In fact, just as the cases I showed in the presentation, there is still large gap between the final effect and between what we want. So, although I'm optimistic, but perhaps I'm not very sure that in the next 10 years or 20 years that the artificial intelligence or the deep learning technologies will replace us. I think there's still a very tight cooperation between the human's creativity and the artificial intelligence capability of, how to say that, that heavy time-consuming task. Yeah.
Okay, I can see Dr. Sun brought in Professor Sun brought in a very thick book from behind him, and then he was smiling. So I think very eager to answer this question.
Because I like this book. There are so many design movements, so many world-leading designers in this book in our history. But I think AI cannot create a new style. AI cannot create a design movement. So what AI can do is, there's a solution space which can be defined by a design style. For example, modernism design style. So AI can provide a solution from this design space, and then we can choose one. But what AI cannot do is to start something new, is to break this solution space. That's why I think in future, maybe in the next 100 years, there's no AI in this book. There's still some human designers in this book. It's human who create history, who create a new design movement. So that's it.
Very good. Thank you. Professor Hall, you want to add on to this?
Yeah, I totally agree. I was going to give the example where Autodesk already have a facility in their software where you can specify, it basically helps you design the components, and you can say the volume of the component, you can tell, you can say where all the stresses are going to go, and you can indicate the fixing points for the components, and then it goes away, does some very clever things, calculates 10,000 or 100,000 different variables, and then it'll come back with the top 10, depending on the envelope of performance that you've specified. So we can do this already. We can kind of point, machine learning at generating components, and then it narrows down the selection, and we pick the final one. But choosing isn't designing. so we're still putting we're effectively still operating in the problem space. We're deciding what the problem is, and we're getting some great assistance in narrowing down the solutions, but that's not designing. So I think it's going to be a very, very long time before, AIs can actually say, okay, this is the type of component that you need, or this is the kind of structure. And the example that was given just before me was fantastic. That book in 100 years' time, I'm sure it won't have any AI-driven, design movements. I think it'd be extremely unlikely that that's going to happen. And if you look at Alan Turing's papers in the 1940s, he was saying that, yes, of course, there'll be intelligences that will be equal or even greater maybe than human intelligences, but they're going to be very different forms of intelligence. I think that's something that we need to sort of bear in mind as we go forwards.
Okay, I have a final question, which is a combination of a number of questions I've been getting. So don't worry, your questions are going to answer. It's all on actual design education. It's from Griti, Jera, Junkai, and a number of others. So the question is, in the age of AI, what should design education focus on? And should design school make some curricular changes? So maybe I start with Dr. Huang. So because he is probably a user of design school rather than operators of design school. So I would actually like to listen from Dr. Huang first.
Okay. When especially for us, when we talk about the design, we usually think about the fine art or the drawing or something like that. But for us, when we talk about design, we usually think about the product design. What function should the product provide? Could the function inspire people, or could the function, how to say that, make the life much more easier? So for us, the design is much more concrete, much more related to the functions. So it's kind of reflection of the product functions. So when we talk about design, and especially by using the artificial intelligence, we usually care about the user experience. And how do we try to improve the user experience? Just take the example that we use the artificial intelligence, like the deep learning technologies, to recognize face, to reconstruct face, and to tracking the bodies. One major problem is that we try to design a kind of interactive interaction that makes that to relieve users' burdens. Perhaps we all know that even for the mobile device, you have to use your finger to click or use another hand to hold the mobile device. That also will be inconvenient. From the other hand, we try to make a further step that, in fact, our body is kind of interaction. Our body is kind of tools. That's not that we may involve ourselves into the system. So perhaps I think in future, especially in the design of AR systems, I think there perhaps will be no, how to say it well, there will no very clear boundary between the users and the system. In fact, all the augmented reality, all the augmented content may be evolved into the real world. So when you look at the wall, it will display all information, the news, all the weathers in front of you. So if you do not care about it, it will disappear automatically, but not by the current way that we have to select, or we have to actively select the information. So that in future, I think for the design, especially for the augmented reality aspects, we always try to merge or try to blur the gaps between the users and the system.
Thank you. Professor Hall?
Yes, I think, in terms of education, I'd maybe go back to one of my earlier points, which is really that visibility and tangibility are, crucial. And without these two things, design really struggles. And I think I would, take up the previous comment that the user experience is completely at the heart of this. And without those two things being understood and developed in the context of AI, like how do we actually understand what are the types of visibility, what are the types of tangibility that people can actually generate through design, then I think that's the key starting point. And then developing off the back of that is trust and implication. So if we see things, then we can develop models of trust. If we have tangibility, then we can understand models of implication. We can understand consequences. We can understand who's responsible for which parts of these sets of relationships. But without that initial key aspect, which is the exchange between AI and design, it's around that visibility and tangibility. But on the other hand, this is just another tool. When we've designed with thousands and thousands of different types of tools and technology over time. So the principle of designing with yet a new technology or yet another tool should be second nature for design. But this is a very different type of tool. It is very different to the type of things that we've had to deal with before. So I think it comes with some special considerations.
Professor Sun, any quick words to
Okay.
add?
Okay, I think the current mainstream design education is the education of Bauhaus, but I think more and more schools, especially the prestigious design schools in the world, is trying something new, and they are exploring various possibilities. For example, I think Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Zhejiang University, and all the other top universities, we are trying something totally different. Just like when we check the list of the top 10 design schools in the world, each school's curriculum is totally different. The way they educate the next generation of designers is totally different. So I think many universities, many design schools are trying to embed AI, embed big data education into their curriculum, but the solution is totally different. That's the first thing. The second is, okay, I think, as I mentioned, I think designers must have the ability to talk to AI and be able to use AI well. But someone mentioned in the Zoom meeting that I think the learning of AI must have a very intuitive, very user-friendly interface. Just like, okay, when Bill Gates Bill Gates want to design the first personal computer, or Steve Jobs want to invent iMac, so very easy to use. It's very, very important. And today, many companies are doing this, trying to provide an easy-to-use AI platform. For example, Google, Amazon, Alibaba, Baidu. And I think it's very good, but it's not enough. We also need to develop platform services, software for our design education. So our students or ourselves can use this platform, use this technology, just like how we use Photoshop, how we use AI, how we use other design software. So that's very important medium, maybe not a course, maybe need the universities and our industry partners to work together to provide this kind of solutions. So thank you.
Thank you. I was just told by my producers that we have overran a little bit, but we have a word cloud to show before we end the session. It's pretty self-explanatory. We have design very, very prominent in our discussion, AI, people, students, education, designer, designed, and technology. So thank you very much to our three distinguished speakers, Dr. Huang, Professor Sun, and Professor Ho. So I will close this panel now. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for their sharing and questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We had a full day of brilliant presentations and discussions on the fascinating topic of design education in the era of AI. Wonderful speakers around the world. Our heartfelt thanks to all the speakers from different time zones to make this possible. There is no denying that AI is better than humans in doing certain things, far superior in fact, as we see today in some tasks. The most obvious is AI is better at handling multiple variables. When my son posts pictures of his latest limited edition Kobe Nike sneakers on IG, this particular content and the accompanying comments, as well as the time of the day, like post, dwell time, what his friends are looking at, trending events, location, and type of devices he's been using, or get fed into a dynamic personalization system to design his best experience. No human designer can compete with that level of personalization. But don't worry though, designers are better at least two things. Well, at least I think we still are. Firstly, human designers are still better at creating original content. Much AI-generated designs are the result of churning through large data sets of existing designs. We can still somehow fish out that great idea while stuck in traffic, staring at the traffic light waiting for it to turn green. No machine can do that yet. Secondly, we are clearly much better at working with nuances and rubbish, or what I call non-intelligent designs. Designers work with these idiosyncrasies and whims of human beings. It is still a challenge to train intelligent machines to decipher, express subtle emotional nuances. But as we saw in today's presentations, machines are also making progress in these areas as well, so we will see. Designers of various fields have always evolved with new tools and technologies available. AI is no different. AI may certainly do the job of some designers of today, but not designers of tomorrow. Education for this new era should be about how we work with AI. We will all work towards that, and I'm sure much discussion will follow. Last but not least, I would like to congratulate the PolyU team for putting together this forum, which is no easy task given the circumstances. The Leadership Forum kicks off a series of wonderful events of the Business of Design Week, featuring over 100 local and international visionaries and creative leaders. So don't miss the opportunity and get your free experience pass now. So this concludes the forum. So wear a mask, wash your hands, stay safe. And let's welcome back Professor Lee, and all speakers and moderators, so we can say goodbye to everyone. So see you next year.
See you next year. That was we enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.